The breaking of the bone was because the oven was tiny. Now the oven is 10 times bigger. People's mindsets have not changed. They are still breaking the bones of the chicken to fit
Still
into
making the bones of
much
the chicken.
exactly, to fit a much bigger oven. And the story is more about how things could have moved on technically. Government could have brought in several policies, but if people's mindset is still set in one place, then
Hello, folks. A large part of the world is currently facing the cost of living crisis. For Nigeria, it's much more than the cost of living crisis. Nigeria has a ton of crises on almost fronts. Now, today, we're going to be talking to an advocate of something called adaptive challenge. His name is Dr. Charles Omole. And Dr. Charles Omole is of the opinion that there are several ways that we can actually solve Nigeria's problems, especially using what he calls adaptive challenge. Now, he's going to explain to us what adaptive challenge is, but I can tell you for a fact that some countries actually have used adaptive challenge. So countries like the Netherlands have used it for innovating flood management strategies and adaptation to rising sea levels. Also, we also have Bangladesh, which has implemented robust early warning systems and flood resistance infrastructure to cope with flooding, and Germany when it comes to renewable energy. So, Dr. Omole, what is adaptive challenge?
thank you. Thanks for having me. Well, adaptive challenge, has several elements to it. The whole idea is that, given the history of the world so far, technical solutions tend not to be a problem. You have, transport problem. So the technical solution is to either build roads, build rail, or create integrated transport system, or whatever it is. You have problem with your healthcare. The technical solutions are not really scarce in terms of whether to train more doctors or buy more equipment or build more hospital infrastructure. All that are what I call technical solution. But the challenge countries face is more adaptive. In other words, how do you change people's orientation, people's mindset, people's expectation to reflect the new reality? I mean, a very good, very, very, very maybe simple and good example is when a few decades ago, the United Kingdom, for example, decided to make wearing seatbelt compulsory in vehicles. Now, there was a lot of pushback by the people. So the technical solution was the government made having seatbelt, at least for the driver and the front passenger, compulsory for all vehicle manufacturers. Prior to that, seatbelt was optional. So the government created the technical solution. Oh, yeah, seatbelt was optional for a long time, yes. So the government now said, okay, all new cars from so date must have front, driver, and passenger seatbelt. Now, that is a technical solution. The adaptive challenge is, will people wear it? Will people want to wear it? People who are used to doing, whatever it is they like in the car, being made compulsory for them to wear a seatbelt became a problem. So people are not wearing it. Now, this is now where the government stepped in. They started with massive national orientation campaign, trying to change people's mindset. They did videos and videos of accident with people wearing a seatbelt, people not wearing a seatbelt, and seeing that you survive better in an accident if you have seatbelt on. Then they started that, by the way, is a carrot. Then they started the stick by saying you will get a fine if you are caught not wearing a seatbelt. So that's a massive education campaign. And within a 6 to 8 year period, wearing seatbelt became 95% compliant in the UK. So you move from a period where people felt wearing a seatbelt was what I don't need to a period where it becomes a default thing you do when you enter the car. Now, that 8-9 years government used to convince people to, educate people to all that, that is a period of the adaptive solution. And what we tend to have, I think my problem with the situation in Nigeria is that government just announce things. They, deliver technical solutions, but they actually don't deal with the mindset of the people, which in a way means that for every solution government creates, people find a way around it. So we end up spending these billions, so to speak, on these technical solutions, and the developmental, consequence doesn't follow because people are not using those solutions. People are still, using the same old mindset. And I remember in my speech, one of the examples I gave was of a daughter that looked at the mother. They have this massive microwave oven in the house, and the mom wanted to cook a small piece of chicken. And you just saw the mom crushing the bones of the chicken, making it everything tiny. So he asked the mom, why are you, the microwave is big enough for 5 chickens. Why are you, you know, breaking the chicken to these tiny bits to put in this big microwave oven? And the mother said, well, that's how I saw my mom do it. So the young girl went to the grandmother to ask the same question. And the grandmother said, that I saw my mom do it or did it. So luckily for the girl, the great grandmother was alive. So went to meet the great grandma. Said, why do you have to break, And the great grandmother said, well, he said before the war, the first oven that existed were very small. So even a small chicken couldn't fit in. So we had to break the chicken into small bits to fit into the tiny oven that was in existence then. What's the lesson of the story? The breaking of the bone was because the oven was tiny. Now the oven is 10 times bigger. People's mindset have not changed. They are still breaking the bones of the chicken to fit into much exactly, to fit a much bigger oven. And the story is more about how, things could have moved on technically. Government could have brought in several policies. But if people's mindset is still set in one place, then they will not benefit from what government has done. The nation productivity-wise and every other indices will not move forward because the tools are there, but people are not using it. So that, I think, is a major challenge that we have in Nigeria. And that's exemplified by I think a few months back when there was this street protest in Nigeria. And then you notice that within a 3-week period of that protest, things that the government have done in the last 18 months that people didn't know they've done started being reeled out. And the question you ask yourself is, did the government have to wait for a protest for people to know that they've done A, B, C, D? So it shows the fact that a lot is being done, but people either are not aware, and even if they are aware, they still behave as though those things have not been done. And we have several examples of that in Nigeria. It's a massive problem. Within 3 months of opening the third Niger Bridge in Nigeria, I remember then the then Minister of Works and his team went to just across the road. They found out that the manhole covers and the railings, people have started stealing it.
I saw a video. I saw a video of that.
Exactly.
It was mind blowing. It was
exactly. So you ask yourself, you say, okay, we are not developed infrastructurally. So government said, okay, let's build this nice bridge to link the the north and the south. And the best thing some Nigerians feel they needed to do was to go and sabotage it. Same thing with our rail. The Lagos-Ibadan rail had to be stopped at one point because people physically went to actually steal the rails off the floor. So these are the challenges we are facing. That we are saying on one hand, government, you are not developing the country. On the other hand, every attempt to develop, the same Nigerians will go and sabotage it. So the question has to be, why are they like that? Why is it that an average Nigerian will see that and we'll just observe it? We don't even call the police or do anything. Why are we detached? Is it a case of self-fulfilling prophecy, so to speak, that government is useless, so it doesn't matter what they do because I believe they are useless? I want to engage with it. So A lot, therefore, I feel the government has to do to help change the mindsets of Nigerians. And that's why in that piece I noted what I call the toxic mindsets, so to speak, that affect Nigerians. And those toxic mindset means it doesn't matter what technical solution the government bring, we will never develop unless we begin to change such mindsets. And I think that is where I think the government is failing massively in the country.
There will be obvious failures when the government cannot even communicate what they do adequately, much less trying to change the mindset or the orientation of the people and the way people are doing things. Something occurred to me about 2 days ago. I've been in Nigeria for the longest period, in the past 10 years that I've ever been. I could be in Nigeria 7, 8 times a year, but I've never stayed this long before. I decided to stay for about 6 weeks just to get a true feel of what was actually going on. A lot of people were talking about the cost of living crisis, the way prices were changing, and how they felt that government was going to respond. And there is no way to actually feel these things except you actually sit down and feel the pulse for a little while. The cost of doing that in the past 6 weeks, something has occurred to me. It seems like we are a very selfish, inconsiderate group of people. Starting from the way we drive, to the way we park, to our attitude towards ourselves at the airports, at the bus parks, shops. Everybody is trying to outdo the other, rather than just taking things one step at a time, so that at least you'll be able to have more clarity and have a better structural approach to dealing with issues. How can we come up with the right type of message to start pushing adaptive challenge?
Well, I mean, I remember, during the first outing of Buhari, Idiagbon, they started a program called War Against Indiscipline.
War Against Indiscipline. Why?
Yes, and exactly. And during that period, I was actually living in Lagos. I was living somewhere in Jubo in Lagos. And for those who know that, that's bang on what we call Ikorodu Road, the main artery that cuts across from mainland to island. And one of the common things we used to see prior to that campaign was people crossing the express. They would even do so under an overhead bridge. Rather than climb the bridge, they would just cross the express. So then they stationed soldiers across the length and breadth of that road. Anyone caught crossing the bridge, they will frog jump you. Now, whether that was the right thing or not is a different story. But within a 3-month period, I'm telling you, you see people queuing up to use overhead bridge. So that is an example of adaptive solution, whereby people changed their behavior because there's a consequence. Nigerians are the beauty of a nation like Nigeria is that we're talking about, it sounds like a pun, but, we are actually very adaptive people, so to speak, if there are consequences. A very good example I give people is carry 100 Nigerians on a flight from Lagos to London or Lagos to US, and then bring them back. Commercial airline. Just notice the behavior of those 100 people when they land in, say, New York or London, and watch their behavior when they land in Abuja or Lagos. When they land in London and they tell them, please sit down until the plane stops, but nobody stands up. Those same 100 people, bring them back to Nigeria. In fact, as the plane lands like this, it's still moving. People are standing up, doing all and they start shouting, please sit down, please sit down. So you ask yourself.
Even from the point of departure, you start seeing the difference.
So the point I'm making is, but it's the same people. So what that means is, when they are coming to London or New York, they know they are coming to a place where there will be consequences for their action. And when they get to Nigeria, it's Nigeria, what can the police, I will pay my way out at the most. So what I'm saying is, Whenever Nigerians see consequence for their action, they adapt. But we have a situation where the nation, the level of impunity, people feeling there's no consequence for their action. As somebody who lives in Abuja, I'm currently not in Abuja, but as somebody who lives in Abuja, one of the major challenges we will face is anything from 5 p.m. onwards. People just take one way. They will face you. Look, while in Abuja, I have some security team around me, and I told them that you must obey traffic light, you must obey traffic regulation. You see me, my escort team, everybody waiting by the red traffic light. You see all manner of cars just passing us, jumping red light, left, right, and center. And this is the problem. And those Nigerians will tell you government is our problem. So I believe the first thing I started by saying Buhari first outing was the creation of National Orientation Agency. That agency started with jingles, adverts, radio jingle, all manner of newspaper adverts, just encouraging people to be disciplined. And that worked. It worked. But the problem now is the agency is now being mushroomed under Ministry of Information. Is terribly, terribly fund. It's not even. The funding is nothing to write home about. So the first thing I believe the government needs to do is to move the National Orientation Agency out of that ministry and put it directly under the president, and then pump appropriate funding into it, and let them start a program of national reorientation in a proper way. Let people begin to see that there is enlightened self-interest in obeying the rules. And now, but the key thing is this. Like in my speech, I said everything starts with leadership. Last year, or either late last year or early this year, before the general election in England, Rishi Sunak was the prime minister. After I became prime minister a few, and this must have been last year, he did a recording in his car, just encouraging people, but he was driving. The recording came out 2 weeks later. The number 10 Downing Street released the recording. Guess what happened? Rishi Sunak was given a ticket by the police because you are not supposed to use your camera while driving. Your mobile phone while driving. He was a prime minister. That sent a powerful message that if the prime minister can be given a ticket for doing that,
nobody's about to go.
Exactly. Even though people agreed with what he was saying, he was encouraging people, he was trying to, whatever. But the point is that he could have packed. The point I'm making is leadership have to exemplify the qualities they are seeking in people. Because National Orientation Agency cannot be used to create a two-tier nation where it's okay, the rest of you, this message is for you. For those of us who are in power, it doesn't apply to us. It will not work. So the leaders have to exemplify these things. And when we are talking about, for example, some of the criticism of this current government, some of them is optical. Let me give you a typical example. Under Buhari, we were paying about towards the tail end. I think we are paying close to 400 billion a month in subsidy. Okay. This year, the budget of National Assembly, that's Senate, House of Reps, all the allowances, all their capital project, everything put together was about 360 billion. Now, watch this. It means the budget of the whole National Assembly, which means even if we scrap the National Assembly today, in terms of the operational budget, it couldn't pay subsidy for 1 month. So when Nigerians complain about things like SUVs that the senators are buying and all the whatever, in my head, the way I read it, it's not so much of whether if they don't buy those things, it will tangibly affect our national economy. No, because as a percentage of our spend, those things are minute. But those things are important for messaging. If you are in a situation where you are saying people should tighten their belt, we are going through this rough ride, even if it's 1 naira you are saving, and you are showing you are saving that 1 naira, you've succeeded as a leader in exemplifying what you're expecting people to do. So a lot of these things I'm saying about the government is almost sometimes they can come across as not being sensitive. You know, they might be doing other things to save money, but they are not articulating it enough. But the key point I'm making here is National Orientation Agency needs to be revived in a more effective way. There's need for a better articulation of what's happening, the changes government is making, and the kind of change we Nigerians need to, embrace to develop that nation. Because the truth be told, anybody in Nigeria today who uses artisans, plumbers, electrician, mechanic, or all those artisans will tell you how they rip you off on a daily basis. I experience it every day.
I'm smack in the middle of it at the moment. Normally, I also do something in the affordable housing space, but for the first time, I'm actually doing something for myself. First time in the past 15, 16 years. So I'm doing a renovation, and I can see the type of things that they are up to, and I'm wondering, why are you doing this to yourself?
Exactly.
Bigger projects that are going to come up in a very short period of time, that you are still going to be gainfully employed, going to be sustainable, so to speak. So why are you in a hurry for the pittance? But I've understood that they would rather have that pittance right now and for them to have what we call delayed gratification, because they can't understand the concept of delayed gratification. How I go chop now is basically what is on their minds. Now, can we blame them at a point? Because when you look at their attitude and you look at the attitude of the average Nigerian politician, there's really no difference, in my own opinion. Because as a politician, one of the first things that one should be thinking about is how to leave a legacy. Nobody is saying that your family should go on. But at least you should be able to do something that people will point at a couple of years down the line. The late Pa Jakonde, for instance, everybody that sees the Ikmore housing estate, sees the primary schools scattered all over Lagos, even though a lot of them don't have any maintenance culture right now. But you can still see that Jakonde's name comes up at every point in time when you look at some of those infrastructure that was developed as far back as then. But today, we see a convolution when it comes to the separation of powers. We see where in the National Assembly you have what you call constitutional projects, or constituency projects, as the case may be. Is that really constitutional? That is another topic for another day. But you also now see where governors are also abrogating so much power and cutting off access to local government funds. The local governments are the ones that can feel the pulse of the people, but the local governments are more or less powerless because they don't have funds. We expect a parent to wake up in the morning and be able to look their children in the face and tell them, you don't have electricity to iron your clothes to go to school. Or that's even if you are doing well. Of the parents that's a tailor, that cannot sew clothes to collect money to be able to pay for that child to go to school. But they can see a commissioner who lives like 3-4 streets away, who is from that neighborhood, grew up in that neighborhood, how his fortunes, quote unquote, seem to have changed overnight when he became a commissioner. He has an escort of about 8 security detail, 5 cars, blaring sirens, brand new SUVs. The projection that people get is that crime pays, basically, when they see things like that, because it is now a case of a dog eat dog world. The type of adaptive challenge that I would have thought ordinarily would have been that it starts from home, where the parent works on the psyche of their children, telling them the difference between good and bad. But when the back of the parent is put up against the wall, they're very correct. Nigerians are very adaptive. Because if Nigerians are not adaptive, the kind of things that have gone on in this country, other countries would have burnt down. But Nigerians always find a way to adapt. They always find a way to move on. They always find a way to just grumble or just get on with it, like the British will say. But for how long is that going to happen? Because if the leadership is not coming up with solutions through the adaptive challenges that you are proposing as well, how is that hungry parent going to be able to come up with adaptive challenges?
When I spoke on the platform event on the 1st of October, one of the speakers and he mentioned it while he was speaking, but I got talking to him, and he was telling me, that I became aware recently that in Nigeria there is a WhatsApp group, Association of Yahoo Mothers, Nigerian Association. Yes, Nigerian Association of Yahoo Mothers, and they meet to pray for their sons and daughters who are in Yahoo that they will succeed. Now, I made that as an example when you're talking about the home in your brief analysis before, to show you that part of the problem.
This is mind blowing. I've never ever heard anything like this before.
In fact, if you listen to the recording of that event, the platform event, he mentioned it briefly while he was speaking about the Nigerian Association of Yahoo Mothers. I think just to show that the kind of thing that in my time, that if you come home with anything that your mom knows or your parent know that your allowance couldn't pay for, you're in soup. That doesn't happen anymore. And therefore that creates an enabling environment for the end justify the means mindset to say, so long as I get the result, it doesn't matter how. And that again, talking about changing the mindset of the people, I think for me, it has to be a situation where leaders have to start I can't overemphasize that, because there's even now in the country, almost, because I'm engaged on Twitter a lot, there's almost an anti-intellectualism among our young people. And when you challenge them, they will say, well, I can't see the nexus between. I remember when I was doing my third doctoral program, and I remember one of I needed to collect some data in Nigeria, because I did it here in the UK. And I remember somebody was saying, look, with all these research and degree, whatever, you are going to end up working for a school cert holder. Then I said, what do you mean? They explain bitterly how they cannot see a link between proper education and wealth. So it's almost like, they said, look, I remember somebody was saying, look, who's your president? Look at all our presidents since whatever. They do, I mean, of course, with the exception of a few, they are not properly educated people. Look at our ministers, look at the requirement in our law to be governors, all these things are such that people feel getting properly educated doesn't mean I will make it. As a result, that has dumbed down the quality of our education. That to the point now where people now see education in Nigeria purely as a certificate, not what happens here. I've met people who claim to have master's degree who cannot write a memo in Nigeria. I'm not joking.
I have lots of war stories. To tell.
So you ask yourself, how did you get a bachelor's, doctor's, or master's degree and you can't write a memo? Simple things. So it shows you that many people, they just buy the certificate so that we can say, okay, I have a certificate. Not deliberately developing themselves, because you have to know that you're actually shooting yourself in your foot if you don't develop your mindset in the quest to get a certificate. I remember one of my old professors in those days used to say, don't just go through the university. Let the university go through you.
Let the university go through you.
So it's not about just getting that certificate at the end. It's about your intellectual, thoroughness, the skill you've developed, the discipline you've developed. But many don't care about any of those things anymore. There was a student of one university in the north. What I mean north, as in one of these private universities, I think it was, or federal university. I can't remember the full story last year, who got into trouble. She graduated and put it on social media that he said, finally I graduated. He said, thanks to my parents and the other P word for our genitalia, and
Oh
of
yeah,
course,
I saw that. She was in Enugu. I think she or
aha,
something like
I
that. She
can't
went to
remember
school
where. I
somewhere
know
there.
it's, mhm,
Yes.
you know. So now, many people say she was saying the truth. That's how she got her certificate.
The
She was
certificate has been
thanking.
revoked. It was
Yeah,
revoked.
exactly.
The
It
school
was
revoked.
revoked as a result.
You
Exactly.
know.
Now, but I'm
Yes.
I'm just using that as an example to show you how low we've got in terms of quality of education, where it's not purely about the certificate. Now, that kind of girl, how do you expect her to perform at an interview? I was recruiting for somebody 5 months ago in Abuja. She came in with a team of other people. So myself and two of my friends were conducting the interview. She said she studied mass communication. I needed somebody who can transcribe, for example, as part of the skill. So I said, "Do you know how to transcribe?" She said, "Yeah, but because I'm good in body language," the way she responded, I knew I wasn't convinced. I said, "Okay, what is transcribe?" She said she doesn't know what it means. A 2-1 graduate of mass communication doesn't know what the word transcribe means.
Oh, she had 2-1, so
Yes.
it might be excusable. Imagine if it was a first class student. Because I had a similar incident where I had a couple of people a couple of years ago. So the one that said she had the first class, that was the one that was supposed to be my collective assistant. So one day I was in a hurry. I was getting on the flight from Lagos to Abuja. I said, I need to have this document ready. And I've given a presentation, so I had the PowerPoint slides. So I said, convert the PowerPoint into a Word document and send it to me. That's all I want you to do. Don't worry, everything itself. Just convert it. Just want to be able to
Mm.
make it very good. You will not believe what she did. She went to PowerPoint, put the cursor of her mouse over it, dragged it all the way down, right clicked, went to Word, right clicked, pasted, and sent it to
Oh dear.
first class.
Oh dear,
I
dear,
don't want
dear.
to mention the university she went to so that the university will not be scandalized, but it is one of the premier universities in Nigeria. And I realized that a lot of these things, so at some point, it's probably not the fault of these ex-students, because I don't know if I should call them graduates or not. I think a lot of it also has to do with the orientation they get from home. Not everybody is primed for a university education. Some are primed for monotechnics, polytechnics, etc. Some are primed more for internships. But we have this thing about we like grandeur. We prefer pomp to performance, where we
That's correct.
like to attach titles and letters to our
Mhm.
names that we cannot actually back up how we got them or what use they actually are. So a lot of parents actually should be looking at what would be beneficial, what would be of interest, and what is my child capable of, rather than trying to force these types of education on them. Now, some people might argue with you about how beneficial university education is as compared to, say, vocational education. But we have
Mhm.
seen that China went through an adaptive challenge, closing their borders and getting their people to acquire at least one skill so that they could become a productive nation. We don't have any such thing here. Maybe that is one of the initial adaptive challenge that we need to try to put into place, whereby we can become a productive country. Because if we are not producing, we can't earn foreign exchange.
Yes. Yes. Look, I mean, if you, I mean, for those who are students of history, I keep emphasizing everything starts with leadership. I remember the story of Thomas Sankara. When Thomas Sankara became the military president of what's it called?
Burkina
Change the
Faso.
name now. Is it Burkina Faso?
Burkina Faso.
Yeah. Okay. Now, one thing that he did was that he banned importation of textile. He banned importation of foreign vehicles. He said they must grow there. And what did he do? All his military uniform were sourced locally. The vehicle was driving was a local car. So clearly, once the people saw that, the adaptive challenge was slightly easier because it was walking the talk, But that's what I'm saying, that when leadership exemplify the change they want people to embrace, it's easier for people to say, okay, if he can do that, then whatever the price, I can manage to do that too. But but when you have a situation where I'm using as an example, if the government say, make sure you wear local textile, and you see your leaders wearing imported suits, imported material, people will not change in that kind of environment. They need to see that you mean it, that you are also paying the price. Therefore, okay, we will follow. So, and this is why this is why I was talking when I was giving the example of National Assembly earlier. That this is why I said many of these things is about optics, and optics can affect perception. And I tell people in government all the time. I say, listen, truth is neither here nor there in that sense to an average citizen. To an average citizen, their perception is their reality. But, so when people talk about scrap the National Assembly, now let's say we scrap National Assembly tomorrow, suddenly people find out that, okay, we've not really saved much financially. What else would they say we should scrap next? The whole idea is people just want to see leaders that are exemplifying these things. Okay, you told us to tighten our belt. You too, tighten your belt. I remember while I was younger, I used to go to Ibadan from my hometown in Elisha. I had an uncle, my dad's immediate junior brother. And it's one of those very strict Christian home and all that stuff. And there was discipline around, you have to wake up at, 5:30 to pray, for example. Me, I was coming from Malaysia where I wake up anytime I like. 5:30, everybody, they wake you up. Now, within a 3-4 day period, I adapted. Why? I see my uncle, who probably sometimes will come home at 2 a.m. By 5:30, he was awake. So in my head, if my uncle can, me that I slept at 9 p.m., then I'm sure I can wake up by 5:30. He that came in at 2 a.m., he's still waking up. I'm using that as an example that if you see a leader exemplifying something, no matter the price you have to pay as a citizen, it's easier for you to do that. And in the case of Nigeria, I'm not saying the leaders are not necessarily doing those things. In some cases, they are not. But I also feel it in some cases is poor strategic communication on the part of the government. They are not connecting with people. They are not communicating. Even me, as active as I am in the polity in Nigeria, in terms of civic knowledge, asking me right now, I can't name more than 7 federal ministers out of 48. Maybe if I stretch it, maybe 10, if I can stretch it.
You know much more. You still know, even at 7, so you still know much more than I.
Exactly. So, and there are 48 ministers who are not engaging. Many of them are not engaging. They've never given any media briefing. You don't know what's going on in their ministry. And they're spending billions of our money. So there's poor strategic communication. So a lot of what government is doing, many people are not aware, of this thing. So these are the things I think
people don't believe. People don't believe that they're doing anything.
Exactly.
People don't believe they're doing anything. And this has been going on since. So I was explaining something to somebody some time ago. So there was a transaction, and somebody's WhatsApp was hacked. And there was a case of somebody collected monies from a couple of friends and family, amounting to roughly about 12 million. So it was a case of we're able to shut down the account that money went to. And then they were able to do what they call a trace. So it wasn't just a case of the person set up an account or set up dot accounts and was able to send money to some other account. The person did not own the BVN that they used to open the accounts. Wow. So it was a case of they stole somebody's SIM, hacked the SIM, and now used the details of the person from the person's BVN on the banking apps to open dot accounts to. Yeah. But anyways, the police were able to track and trace, and they arrested him. So when we're talking about it, I now said, to the friends, thank God for Buhari. Said I beg your pardon. I said, well, he was doing his time that they implemented BVN. Because if they didn't implement BVN, they would have been able to nab these guys. So even if you say that Buhari did not do anything, he saved you money now at the end of the day. Everybody started cracking up, everybody said, but the point was, there wasn't any adequate communication. There was nothing to orientate people on the actual benefits of NIN and the BV. It just seems more like government efforts to implement something so that some contracts could be given out and some people could put money in their pockets. Because they just do not know how to put together those communication strategies. They will have multiple layers of communicators. You will have SSA strategy, SSA communication, SSA media, SSA new media. And at the tail end of it, there's nothing coming out for us to understand what they are doing as a government. Same thing is happening right now. There was a young man, Ajuri Ngilale, I think his name is, who seems to be making a lot of noise initially, but now he's gone. And everything has gone quiet. It just seems like it's the same old same.
Look, if talking about Buhari, I tell people, I said the concept of duality in psychology shows that there's nobody that can be totally good or totally bad. We are mixture. And duality says that we are able to embrace multiple manifestations. So you can't write people off 100% and say, oh, they never did anything good. But communication is key. Talking about Buhari, for example, one of the major story that was a major scandal during the Buhari era was when, in the planning of the rail line, they extended it from the north to Maradi in Niger, our rail line. And of course, the story became all over social media is because actually Buhari originally must have come from Niger, so he's developing his people, all kinds of stories. So I took it upon myself to actually do a basic 1 to 2 hour research on the matter, place a few phone calls. And I found out that Maradi is industrial heartland of Niger. In terms of some of the biggest industry in the country are in Maradi. Niger is a landlocked country. Currently, so because they are landlocked, they have no access to the sea. So currently, they use Ghana as their main route to the sea. So by having a train station in Maradi that can take you straight to Lagos, Nigeria can completely shut down all those other competition countries and monopolize the trade route, access to sea for that country, making us billions every year. And somebody looked at me and said, how come nobody in government ever made this argument? Yeah. So that's an example of how they allow some stupid stories to keep flying. Oh, it's because Buhari is partly from Niger, that's why he's doing whatever. But these are simple communication problems. And sadly, this government seems to have the same problem. Now,
very, very same problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, let me give an example. The president is traveling. The president is coming back to the country. I will never allow cameras if I was advising the government on communication. All we know that he's in country shaking on. No need to show camera of all the people, dignitaries waiting for him at the airport, shaking hands with each of them. It's unnecessary for Nigerians to see that.
Why are the dignitaries even there? Why are they?
Exactly.
Where are the dignitaries? I don't mind the cameras because you know what happened with the Buhari. You know what happened with the Buhari regime, whereby they said Buhari had passed and it was a case of it was some Jubilee from Sudan or what. So if Nigerians feel that their president is an old one, quote and unquote, and they need proof of life at every point in time, that's fine. The cameras can be present. You can still send the right message and say, okay, no, it is not Ajadi from Cotonou. It is actually Bola that is there. You know?
Yes.
But for the dignitaries, it still blows my mind the amount of time, the amount of resources that are put into going to go and receive the president. The president of the United States travels. When he lands, he's landing on the west lawn or the east lawn of the White House. He lands at the airport, gets on a helicopter and flies into the White House.
Exactly.
Who is there to receive him? It's just a protocol. That's it. Case closed. Why do we expend so much energy on talk rather than performance? It still beats my imagination.
Actually, I agree with you 100%. I was maybe I was just trying to be evolutionary rather than revolutionary. You know, the solution actually, you are right. Nobody needs to be there other than one or two people to receive it. I mean, I was showing you, sent a video yesterday of a South African president traveling. They have their own presidential jet. I think one military officer followed him to the aircraft. You know, all this, whatever. But I was even saying the solution is exactly what you've said, which is nobody should even waste their time to go and do that. I'm even saying, assuming they even say, okay, we can't go that far immediately, then there's no point making it a prime time show either, is my point. You know, so at the end of the day, at the end of the day, I'm just saying, you know, there's something about, you know, the way you communicate with people. Look, Nigeria is an incredibly difficult country to govern. Let me tell you a story. During the COVID-19 problem in Nigeria, you know, globally, you know, so the president, so this was a story told me by somebody who was there. The Buhari had a meeting and I think agreed certain palliatives. And he said he should focus on states most affected by COVID-19. Yes, Mr. President. When the president left, they looked at it. All the states most at that time, all the states actually that have incident of COVID-19 were all southern states. Lagos, you know, they said the minister in charge who was in northern and said, so you want to share palliatives only to southern states. You are ignoring the north. That is how, I don't know how they move things around. They now started sharing palliatives for states that, as at that time, did not even have any case of COVID-19, in order to balance the geopolitical consideration. That's the kind of mess we're dealing with in this country. You know, if it's only Kano or another state that have COVID-19, then let all the palliatives go there. That's what that palliative is meant for. It's a COVID-19 relief. But everything Nigeria, you know, people are, you know, all kinds of primordial sentiments, tribal and ethnic consideration, things that absolutely have no value to national development. All this nonsense goes on in Nigeria. So I believe that we need, you know, leaders that will begin to signpost what's happening ahead. The second thing, before I forget my chain of thought, number one, the government needs to exemplify, leaders need to exemplify what they want us to do. Number two, I believe there's a need for a grand narrative for us as a nation. What's the vision of the president for Nigeria in 2080? What will Nigeria look like in 2080? What is the vision? You know, there's a whole Eastern saying that great leaders and great elders are those who plant trees under whose shade they know they will never sit. Yes. And that, for me, is what a great nation builder should be. What is the vision of Nigeria 2080? Look, people can bear any pain if they can see if they can see if there's a vision for what's going on. You know, people can endure anything. It's like a father that comes home and say, look, folks, for the next 1 year, we are going to be eating only 1 meal a day. but this is because I'm doing A, B, C, D. By the beginning of the next year, it become 2 meals a day. By the time we get to the third year, we now go back to 3 meals a day. And he explains, shows the people, his family, they won't complain that first year. They are feeling the pain, they are feeling the pinch, but they can see a vision.
Probably a case of it's taking them to, probably a case of is completing their house where they are going to move in and stop paying rent. So it's a case of this is our our collective sacrifice to be able to achieve that goal.
So in Nigeria, people feel like just paying the price for no discernible reason. We are just starving and there's no grand narrative. There's no vision of what the country looks like. I'm not talking of 4 years. I'm talking of, 20, 50, I mean, that is what we need. That way we can see that, okay, we are paying the price now. In so period, this is what will happen. After this is what will happen. But without that grand vision, people cannot see a nexus between the little price they're paying now and a better future. Even if not for them, even if it's for their children. They have to see that link. And I think we are not seeing that. So it makes people now to be more short-termism. Look, I don't care. And we complain every year. Somebody will give you 10,000 naira to sell your vote. People say, well, that's the biggest amount I've seen in 4 years. Some of these poor people will tell you that that's the biggest amount I've held in my hand in 4 years.
Yes, that's most likely the largest amount of money they've seen as physical cash, even in the past 4 years. But that being said, when you spoke of a visionary leader, that got something to my mind. So would you say that General Sani Abacha was a great leader, considering that there was Vision 2020 as of 2006, 2007?
Abacha, remember what I said earlier, I didn't even know you were going to ask this question about duality. Abacha was not all that bad. He was bad in a lot of things. But I mean, to the point where, look at it. I was reading a UN document recently that showed that they did a poll in Iraq, and 85% of Iraqis felt life was better under Saddam Hussein than today.
Let me chip in there, sir. Ben Ali, that's his name, of Tunisia. If you do a poll in Tunisia today, 85 to 90% of Tunisians will tell you that life was better under the dictatorship.
So, I think it's not that people are romanticizing dictatorship. It's just that that nobody can be 100% bad. Even I don't know how true. I read an headline last night that Obama said one of the greatest mistakes of his regime was allowing Gaddafi to be killed or removed. That is a mistake. But regardless of what you think, Libya was an exemplary country compared to what it is today under Gaddafi. So
even though they see there's such thing as a benevolent dictator.
Exactly. So the point I'm trying to make, therefore, is talking about Abacha is the fact that yes, he got some things right and he got many things wrong. And I think, having to articulate this things matter. And by the way, what I don't want is us to just piggyback on some United Nations Millennium Goal, vision, this vision. I want a bespoke Nigerian vision. I don't want a rehash of some global whatever we can borrow from it of UN saying this is Vision 2030 for UN. What is it we as a nation want to achieve in this length of time? And I think that is essential right now to drive people to become more compliant, because you are more likely to endure hardship if you are going through it as part of a grand narrative that you understand. Okay, we are heading in this direction. So I want to just capture 3 or 4 things that I think are salient from what I've said. Number 1, National Orientation Agency needs to be moved to the presidency. It needs to actually begin to do its work, born by that name, National Orientation. There needs to be some grand narrative that they need to, and kind of behavioral concepts and construct that Nigerians need to embrace. That needs to be done by National Orientation Agency. our leaders need to be particular about optics. They need to begin to exemplify what they want Nigerians. I mean, for example, I don't see why, for example, one of the presidential or one of the cars the president used, I don't see why it couldn't be either Innocent Motors or there's this other one in Lagos,
Not.
Nord, yes,
Not.
or something, or at least Nigerian. That,
Even electric.
Pardon?
Or CNG. Even electric,
Exactly.
even an electric vehicle or a CNG powered vehicle.
Exactly. So these are little things, I'm saying that leaders can use to drive change. Nigeria is a massive change management challenge. And I think, and as a result of that, we need leaders who will begin to show people this is where we are going. So there's a need for that grand narrative, and then we need government to show by their appointments that we have some of the best minds in the world, Nigerians. So it's heartbreaking sometimes when you see people occupying position of power who have no technical knowledge, no vision for that particular sector. Talking about, I operate, massively within the national security space in Nigeria. And I'm looking at people that were appointed into key security. I'm not talking of the professionals now. I'm talking of the political, ministers and so. These are people who don't have knowledge of the sector, that they are working. And not only knowledge, they don't have effective managerial skill of people or anything. And yet, there are people with solutions. Look, with 2-3 kind of appointment within our security sector, I can stake my life on it. In 6 months, security in Nigeria will be transformed. But those people will never be appointed to those posts, because those people will be so busy solving the problem because they are not politicians. They don't have political ambition. Right now, you have all the ministers, many of them want to be next governor, next senator, next this. So what they are doing right now is campaign. Putting funds aside for campaign, everything is political. Whereas if you bring people who are more technocrats in, they are not competing for any election, they are not interested in whatever, they will work to the last day. Why is it that the president cannot say, okay, these are the 12 ministries that are priority for my vision? So these 12 ministries, I will only appoint technical experts. The rest, I can use that for political patronage. You cannot rule out politics in this game. But these core ministries, only technocrats will be there. We will see the difference. Instantly, you will see the difference. So, but why are the right people not being appointed to these posts? That is my concern. Because there are solutions to every single problem we have in Nigeria. It's just that the people who are empowered by appointment don't have the ideas. The people who have the ideas and the solutions are not empowered. And then we have a situation where the best of us are being ruled or managed by the worst of us.
Like an interview that we did a month ago, and the guest, Professor Tujiladin, said the geriatrics are really the pediatrics. Now, I know that he was actually being kind when he said that, because the truth is, the people with the brains are being ruled by a lot of people without brains. For me, it's unfortunate that, unlike the stomach, the brain cannot tell you when it is empty. So, in a lot of cases, we actually have people who truly don't know anything. I sat back some time ago and said to myself, why is there no electricity? It should be one of the simplest things to deal with. Even going by what my very good friend, I will call him because I like him quite a lot, Babajide Fashola, Babatunde Fashola said. He said, any serious government will solve the electricity problem in 6 months. I actually thought, being the minister of power, he would have been able to do something about it, but he was not. But the one thing that I actually thought that he would do, because I know he's an exceptionally brilliant man, I actually thought that he would have advocated to have import duty and VAT removed from the importation of solar powers and batteries, so that the average Nigerian would be able to put one small battery in their house and one solar panel and take some burden off the national grid. But now we have seen the national grid that has actually collapsed 105 times.
Yes.
What has gone wrong? Why do we keep churning over the same group of people and getting the same results, and we still do not understand that that is what is going on?
You know, the devil is always in the detail. Somebody said politicians campaign in poetry and govern in prose. You know, the story begin. There's a story, that there's a guy I met 3 years ago in Abuja. He's not a Nigerian. He's a white guy. He was big into real estate, selling all this real estate to people in Nigeria, in Dubai, in different places. He was telling me a story. I'm not going to mention names, obvious reasons. He said he was contacted by the daughter of a particular minister who was Minister for Power at that time, that the dad wanted to buy two of the flats. I think they were about $2 million each at that time. He said, so father said he should come. So he, the white guy, went to the father's house in Abuja. He said, the father said, okay, where is the paperwork? He signed the paperwork and he did his hand like that. He said they will now start bringing bags and bags of cash, $4 million in cash that was paid to him. He said he became scared because how is he going to carry it from that house to his own house and to his office in Abuja? He said, but he now noticed the father, that minister, had a visitor. He said the guy's face looked familiar. He said, so the minister noticed that he was looking at his guest. He said, you mean you don't know him? Mention his name. So they greeted each other and all that, He said when he got to the car, luckily he came with a team of security, police and security, so he was able to carry all the cash to their office. But the point, this is where I'm going. When he checked, the name he was given, the name of the guy that I met with the minister, was the biggest importer of generator into Nigeria. Now, he now called the daughter that, am I putting two? And he said, oh yeah, that he comes to see the dad every month. He must bring certain amount to the dad every month. That importer. So, how do you expect that minister to make power to work?
It's even a hydra-headed problem, because of what you have just highlighted now, something worries me above every other thing. And that is the security implication of being able to take $4 million in cash and take to your office. Where does that money go? How does that money move? Because what that means is that people can steal money for whatever purpose. People can coerce people, blackmail people to access money, and they are able to move that money freely within the system.
Of course. I mean, right now, there are people in Nigeria that have bank accounts, they access it. The bank account is not in their name. The bank account is not linked to their BVN. Several accounts, and they manage those accounts in cahoots with the MDs of banks. I know these things. I know people do, who do it. I mean, incidentally, I don't even have enough money in my account, talk less of an account that's not my own. I mean, so I can't even do that. But I'm just saying that the banking system enables all these things to happen. So the accounts are not linked to their BVN. The account will not bear their names, but yet on their phone, they control the account. Lots of people are doing that in Nigeria. So,
because if they can't receive and process that money, if they can't receive and process that money, they will not be, the minister, for instance, will not be able to take the monies from the generators supply.
Correct. No, I mean, people move money around all the time. It's not, I just don't want to be a cynic, but the truth is the fact that if, for example, you see that the security agency said they captured a bunkering vessel or whatever, just know that 49 other vessels have been allowed to pass. And that one they captured was because it wasn't playing ball. Everyone that play ball will do it. And that's look, I don't want to, I've been in, I went to greet somebody, recently. I won't say how far I go. And then these people came. They said that we have this investor who wants to go into bunkering. And me, I was a visitor, so I just sat down, I was watching. And what was the thing? He said, oh, yeah, the guy said, well, of course, no, that's not a problem. I mean, that can be done. And then he said, okay, how much do you want to be moving every week? And then, bam, 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 call the army. I don't want to give specific names. And those ones, okay, if he pays 500 million a week, bam, 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 call the Navy. They name their number. Bam, 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 call Tompolo and his people, name their number. It's okay, this is it. Then he said, this is my own. So just pay 2.2 whatever billion naira a week. And we'll give you the pass. So it is not wrong when people say bunkering and oil theft is enabled by the security agencies. I mean, some of these ships are as big as half a football pitch. How can the military say how can they say they didn't see? We're not talking, in those days, bunkering used to be one tiny boat with a keg. Now they will bring, massive vessels. And yet, the only difference now is the fact that the people that were doing bunkering before were making 99% profit. Now their profit has been reduced to 60% because they now have to pay a lot more facilitators. That's the difference. Nigerians don't understand these things. When we say we produce 1.3 million barrels or give or take per day, after that 1.3 million, about 300,000 or so, 350,000 of it is already been, given away for the next decade by Buhari against loans that he got. So that number is not even counting for us. Then another 400,000 goes away in bunkering. So the amount we actually have to sell to make money for our Commonwealth is what's left. Saudi Arabia produces 12 million barrels per day. Somebody was telling me that there was one OPEC meeting and Nigeria was asking for that. Look, if Saudi is producing 12 million, we can at least be giving 5 million, barrels per day allocation. He said one of the ministers stood up and said, the 2 million we're giving you, when last did you meet it? Which I said the Nigerian minister had to keep quiet. So technically, that country, as a nation, we could be producing 3-4 million barrels per day. And all this grammar we are talking about, austerity, will not happen. But the problem is, we are not doing so because we have created this system where insecurity has become profitable. When I was the National Security Advisor to the House of Reps and to the Speaker in the 9th Assembly, in 2021, we did a National Security Summit. And one of the findings in the report I wrote for that summit was the fact that 92% of illegal small arms in operation in Nigeria, in circulation in Nigeria, are from official sources. Ribadu, the NSA. I said this in 2021. Just said the same thing. Just said the same thing last week. That the majority of illegal small arms in circulation in Nigeria are from government sources.
We did have an interview with one of Nigeria's topmost security officials, the Chief of Defense Staff, a couple of months ago. So you can watch. We'll be putting the links to that particular interview in the description there, where you can actually watch a couple of these questions that we asked around things and issues like this. And it keeps, rearing its head over and over and over again, regardless of whatever government it is. And I remember an infamous saying by the late General Sani Abacha again, where he said that any time there's insurgency that lasts for more than 24 hours.
That's correct.
Government is involved.
That's correct.
Which is more or less what you have just said, and which is more or less what the present NSA, allegedly regarded to, has said.
Yeah.
But is it a case of it's people at the top level do not know. It's the people at the middle that are, the perpetrators of this, or what exactly. Everything in Nigeria just seems to be a mystery. The more you look, the less you understand at every point.
No, it's people at the top. It's people at the top. I mean, when wherever it is, they spoke with in the. Of course, I'm saying wherever it is because I know the person, because they put the thing on speakerphone, so I go here. So it's not a matter of I'm just deliberately being obscure details. But the person he spoke with in the army was asking for 500 million naira per week. And
Excuse me?
Yes, the Navy asked for
500 million
naira per week.
Per week.
Because they will ask you, how much volume do you want to move? That's what they will use to calculate their demand. And what some of them now do.
Our hypothesis was not wrong.
No, exactly. So what some of them even do is, there are two types of bunkering in Nigeria. There is a bunkering where they take the oil out of the country. There is a bunkering where they move the oil from one city to another city. Because they have a better escape route through that city. Now, both happens, and they ask for, people, okay, we want to do this, okay, this is this amount we'll charge. And then once that is done at the top, they just instruct their foot soldiers down on the ground, okay, between 5 and 6, this is the vessel number, allow it to pass. End of story. I mean, so it's a major problem. It's a major problem. I mean, I wouldn't go into details. There was a particular minister under this administration that was given a particular brief, a ministry that should generate a lot of money for the country. And the minister, when he was first appointed, was gung-ho, was going on about how we must stop this, we'll stop all this illegal, that. I was told that the people went to meet him that, are you ready to die? If not, tone down your whatever. To give you
the Minister of the Federal Republic.
To give you story, we will reduce the quantity so that you can show your boss that, okay, it was 90% before, now it's 70%. So that you can look good and you can stay there. But to say you want to eradicate it, it's not going to happen. Later on, that minister himself now said publicly that his life has been threatened several times. In that place. So the minister has calmed down now. He hardly talks about anything anymore. So look, the question you have to ask yourself is this: is Nigeria worth dying for? That is the key question. Is Nigeria worth dying for? And I believe Nigeria, if you love your country will be in two places: in your head and in your heart. And after 35 years in England, and 4 or 5 years ago, I decided to relocate back home because then, Bajabia Miller, who was a speaker then, he wanted me to come and lead the legislative framework on national security. And it's an issue that was close to my heart. By then, I was sitting on the bench here in the UK. I had to take early retirement from the judicial service. All my friends thought I was crazy and my explanation to them was, you are right, I'm crazy, because if I look at the Nigeria in my head, I should never go back. But if I look at the Nigeria in my heart, I want to go back. Because the question has to be, is it your heart that overrules your head, or your head overrules your heart? That determines whether you go back to Nigeria or not. Because, on all the matrix, it didn't make sense. I had, what's it called? A 98% pay drop moving to Nigeria. 98% drop in my income. So I had to use my own savings. In fact, for the first 6 months of that role, I was not paid 1 naira. All kinds of things, but you endure these things. And what is painful sometimes in all this, I started training police officers and security agencies in Nigeria more than 10 years ago. That's long before I moved back. Every training that I've done for security forces in Nigeria, some are all over the media, not once have I been paid 1 naira in honorarium. Not once.
In all those years?
in all those years. Yet, you go online and you see the people you are making all the sacrifice for. They are the one that abuse you the most. So you now ask yourself, is this nation worth dying for? When 90% of the people will not even appreciate your sacrifice. That now depends on who you are answerable to. I am answerable to God. As a result, even if I'm not appreciated here, at least somebody one day will tell me, well done, thou good and faithful servant. At the end of the day, Nigeria you see things in Nigeria every day, and there's a lot of Stockholm syndrome in Nigeria. They fall in love with their oppressors. You see people defending the people that are oppressing them, either because they're from the same political region, the same tribe, or whatever. And we are trying to say, look, these are the people who cause your problem. But they don't care. So long as it's our man. So these are all the challenges. So Nigeria is a country you can only engage in if your heart overrules your head. Because for those who have the option, your head tells you don't even go back to Nigeria at all. Talk less of relocating back to Nigeria. So,
my head tells me that all the time. My head tells me that. Every time I get on the plane and I come to Nigeria, my head is like, Mr. Man, what are you doing?
Exactly. It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
I'd like to say a very, very big thank you to you for taking that time. I didn't even think that we were going to go this far. I can see from the trajectory of this conversation that we could still go on, because you have a lot that you could speak on when it comes to the issue of Nigeria, the challenges we have, and what type of solutions we can even start to experiment with, start trying to find a way forward. And from what you said, you've been doing it for 10 years without even any experience. So that means that giving a 2-hour conversation with the issue of forward. I'd like to say a very big thank you to you once again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This conversation, and like else. Even now I understand what adaptive challenges are, because, like I said before, these were things that probably day in, day out, in terms of how to construct it. So now we have an idea of what adaptive challenges are. I think the onus is also on us as a people, because we could also cooperatively come up with adaptive challenges for us to be able to change things around local communities.
Mm-hmm.
These I know I tried that into space that I think the conversations with it. Especially when it comes to the issue of A or D. Something to complain about. Before there was no electricity in Nigeria. Now there is some electricity, and some people feel that the electricity is too much because they feel it is too expensive. But then when you now weigh the cost of your electricity as against the cost of the petrol that you are going to buy to fuel your generators, you now start to do a cost-benefit analysis. So everybody now becomes a mathematician, accountant, a bookkeeper, understanding that they have responsibilities not just to themselves but to their families on how they dispose of their income. Like before, when you just throw O1 there, your dog has a litter, you throw O1 there, something happened, everything is an O1. Now everybody's become a bit more fiscally responsible in how they dispose their incomes and all that. So I think maybe that's another form of an adaptive challenge. Band aid itself, because of how expensive it is, then we're all ready to take it. So if at any point in time you have any questions you'd like to send the way of Dr. Charles Omole, please feel free. Send us a message. We'll make sure that he gets the message, we'll forward it to him, and I'm sure he'll be glad to answer. At least now you have an idea that there are people who are truly willing to give back to Nigeria. But he has asked a technical question. Is Nigeria worth dying for? You ask yourself that question. Dr. Omole, thank you very much for taking that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you. You too. Thank you. Bye.